All right, so what I'm going to show you during this session is the technology utilized for the adaptive learning platform Realize It. As an instructor, I'm logged in as an instructor and I'll be utilizing the information for the instructor interface. If you have any questions along the way, please let me know through either typing your question or speaking freely, as you are all unmuted on my end. So I'm showing you the EN 104 Realize It faculty trial. You obviously are coming from a variety of different courses, so yours will look a little bit different, but the interface itself will be the same. To access Realize It, we're going to do so in the classroom area. There's a variety of informational pieces here. To access the learning maps, you're going to access them through the unit learning area. And what you'll see is an actual link. There is one link for every unit. So students will need to click on each of these links to access the units. You as faculty will be able to navigate within the system by clicking on any of the links, so I will show you that now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the link. The way to think about it is the content is delivered in weekly assignments, or we're calling units. So it is offered in a 16-week and an 8-week modality, potentially. When the students click in and the instructors click in through the link in Blackboard, you're always going to land on the unit page that you've clicked in through. So as you can see here, we're looking at Unit 1, which is personal writing. Now, I do want to show that for faculty, you do not need to go back to Blackboard and navigate to Unit 2. If you'd like to see Unit 2, what you can do is click this back arrow, and that will take you into the entire course. Now again, keeping in mind students do not have this option. They need to navigate to the system using the links in Blackboard for each unit. And the reason is because of the integration with the gradebook, we need them to activate through and have that happen. The other thing I wanted to show while I'm looking at this page is how to get back to Blackboard. So to get back into the Blackboard environment, you want to click one of the breadcrumbs. This will take you back to the course. This will take you back to the unit. So that's how you're going to go back into Blackboard. So I'm going to start the training session focusing on the course as a whole and the information that is available. So as you can see, I'm looking at the entire course here, and I'm going to go through the tabs that are available for the course. So I'm going to start with the student area. So keeping in mind, this is going to give you a breakdown of information for your students for the entire course. So for example, here what you're going to see is all of your students. You're going to see their overall knowledge state, which is how well they've done in the system, and the overall knowledge covered, which is how many topics they've completed. As I scroll down to the individual students that are in here, what you'll see is the name, when they last did work, their overall mastery for the course, so the topics that they've covered, and how many of the topics for the course that they've covered, so 16 out of 49. So this gives you a high-level view of how the students are doing in the course as a whole. It includes all 7 units of content. One of the key pieces here, and anywhere you see a student's name, is that you can click on an individual student's name and get some information about the student. So this again is going to give you an overview of this individual student, how much time they've spent so far. You could send them a message and their information. It's broken down by the individual milestones. The key thing here is the engagement. What we can see here with the engagement is we can actually see how many lessons the student has worked on and what they've done within the system. But even more importantly, we get details on when they logged in, how much time they spent, and what they did within the system. So this is not something you would need to do to prepare for your class every week. This is an area where if you're working with an individual student one-on-one to get a deeper dive on them specifically, and or if you see that a student is struggling in your class, this will give you information regarding the activity that they've done in the system, and it's sorted by date, and you can also sort it by the unit, which in this case they call them milestones. I'm going to go ahead and go back out, again using the back button, to the classroom, and I'm going to click on the next tab in the classroom area, which is the milestones tab. Okay, so milestones is the phrase that Realize It uses. These are where the units are housed. This is where you're going to be able to access all of the units as an instructor. So now we're going to take a look in Unit 1 and do a little bit deeper dive, keeping in mind that each unit is set up exactly the same way, obviously noting that the data is going to be a little different questions and topics for each unit, but the setup will be the same. So within the unit, the first tab that you're going to notice is the To-Do tab. So what you're going to see here is if a student has flagged a question as something they feel that they got correct but were marked wrong, that's going to appear here. And what you can do as the instructor is look at the question. In some cases, the student is correct and the question itself is wrong. If that's the case, you're going to want to take a screenshot and submit that to IT so that we can get that corrected. More often than not, what is the case is that the student is misunderstanding the information. If it is correct, what you want to do is click Mark as Correct and shoot them an email, letting them know that you're working on the correction and you've marked it correct. But again, more often than not, it's simple explanation. The student is misunderstanding one of the answers, and we can offer that further explanation as a faculty member. So here the student feels that this is a correct answer, and the system is not counting that as correct. So we would clarify where their misconceptions came. Now, when we send a message like that in the system, the message will be offered to the student once they've logged in to realize it. So the next tab within a unit is going to be the Need to Know tab. What this area is going to show you is what pieces of information you would need to know on a daily basis. So this is where you're going to spend quite a bit of your time to offer support to students. So one piece of data you're going to see is the students that have not started. The other piece of data you're going to see is students that have not done the determined knowledge. So for students, and I encourage each of you to log in as a student, some of you have access to the adaptive courses that are available. Others won't have access until you have your own course. But you want to log in and engage as a student. And the first thing that you'll be offered is a determined knowledge, which is a series of questions that is going to measure what you know about the unit you're working in and offer you previous learning credit, basically. So if you understand some of the content, it'll place you in the map correctly, not requiring that you work on every topic. So we want to encourage that our students do that. If a student were to go in and get everything wrong, it doesn't penalize them at all. So this is a no stakes placement assessment, basically. But again, it lets us know that. The other two areas are working behind. So again, this is just compared to the other students in your class. So it shows you which students are potentially working behind. You can send a message again anywhere you see that. And then this is going to show you specific problems. So what that is a student's name and a topic that they are struggling on. So we as faculty could reach out to the student regarding this topic of, for example, types of personal writing and maybe offer another video or offer support or reach out with a targeted question and offer that piece there. Now, the one caveat I have to mention with the sending of messages is for the student that hasn't started, you probably don't want to send a message here within Realize It because if they haven't logged into the system, they won't see that message. So if a student hasn't started, you're going to want to send them a message in Blackboard or through their email. So keeping in mind that messages sent within Realize It stay within Realize It, think about how you're reaching out to your students, whether you're doing it through Realize It, through Blackboard, or through email. Students who aren't engaging, you might want to reach out multiple ways, as well as a phone call potentially, but the messages do stay in the system. So the next area that we're going to look at is the learning map. So the learning map, these are the individual topics that are offered to the students within the course. And what you see here along the side is you see the individual students that are in the course. So if I were to click on an individual student's name, I'm going to see their learning map information compared to the average. Now the colorations you see here, we have a beginner, which is 0 to 70. We have improving, 70 to 80, expert, 80 to 90, and then mastery, which is 90 to 100. For completion to occur, a student needs to be in the improving area. And so that's when those check marks appear. Notice that there are the lines in between. When a student comes to this originally, they will see locks by any topic that would precede another topic that they haven't worked on, and they need to get to the improving level before they'll be able to access it. And as you can see in the key here, you see locked, available, and then the completed. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the section. So this is the entire learning map. Okay. What we can do is we can dive into an individual topic. So to do that, you double click on one of the topics within the map. And here we're going to receive information specific to this topic. Okay, so before we were focusing on the unit, and now we're looking at an individual topic. So in the first tab, you're going to see your main details. That's going to tell you the mastery of your students overall and how many of them have completed this. So 30 out of 32 have completed this topic. You see which course learning objective it's contributing mastery to. You see your completed students and the students who have not completed this topic. And again, you can click on their names to see more, or next to their names where you see these 3 dots, if you click that, it gives you the option to send the student a message. So you could send the student a message, again, noting that it will go in the Realize It system. Now, as an instructor, this is where you're going to view content for this specific topic. So as you can see here, we have the option of view. When I click view in the instructor interface, this is what the students are delivered, and this is how they engage with the content. So when you're working with students, if they have questions, this is where you're going to be able to see the content from the instructor interface. So you're going to see the information here, the questions. And again, I encourage you to log in as a student and engage with the system when you receive your course. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that for the moment. So again, within an individual topic, another area of information we have is the history. So this shows the engagement with the topic. And I need to change the date range because this course hasn't been engaged with recently, but I'm going to switch that to all. So what you see here is the student, the date that they worked in, how much time they spent, what they did, the description of the activity, how many questions they answered correctly, and then what was the effect of this individual activity on the overall mastery. And so all of that information is there. Students also have access to this. Again, this is a place where you might want to look at an individual student to see what they're doing, how much time they're spending. And this description of abandon means they opened the lesson up and they didn't answer the questions and then they exited it without saving. And so I got scared twice and exited out of the lesson. Not scared, but so that's one of those descriptions. Completed means that they had worked through it, and you'll see completed with their score. And abandon obviously wouldn't have a score because they didn't submit it. The next area I want to show you is the questions area. And what this shows you is the individual questions that your students have answered. So again, I'm going to look at all students. So this is every single question that was asked to an individual student. So this is an area, again, if you were working with a student and you wanted to do a deeper dive on the questions that were asked to them, you can see it here. But when you're thinking about more holistically in your entire course for this topic, where you want to look is the questions of each type. So what that's going to do is there are 4 questions that are asked within this unit, and here are the 4 questions that are offered. You can see how many times it was answered correctly and how many times it was answered incorrectly. So as an instructor, one of the things that I might do is I see this question here was incorrectly answered 10 times. So if I go take a look at what the question is, personal writing serves as one of the following purposes. I might want to post an announcement about this and offer some support for that, a video. If I'm teaching in a face-to-face classroom, this would be a great place for a discussion about what the misconceptions of this are. So you can utilize the missed questions for teaching opportunities and look at where the students are struggling or what the students, what kind of answers they're offering. For the math courses, for example, the questions are variabilized, but you would be able to go here and see what kinds of questions the students are struggling with and could offer those in the classroom. And other courses as well have the questions that we can discuss in the classroom. Within this topic, we're not utilizing submissions or the extra area at this point in time. So I'm going to go back out to the learning map for the unit and continue the process of talking about what's here. So the Students tab also appears within the unit. So remember I showed you the Course Students tab. Okay, so we also have it broken down to focus on the unit. You're going to see a variety of details here regarding, again, not started, haven't completed the term of knowledge. This is working behind or ahead, so comparing it to the rest of the students in your class. This is an area of importance when it comes to looking at your students holistically regarding the unit. What you see here again is the name, the last time they did work, how much time they've spent working on this topic or this unit, how many of the knowledge pieces they've covered, so how many of those topics have they completed, and then what their mastery is, okay, as well as the composite score. So this composite score is the score that goes to Blackboard. Now, keeping in mind this isn't set up exactly the same as it is for our students, the way that the grading works is if students have completed all of the topics, their score is going to be whatever their mastery is. If a student has only completed half of the topics, they can only earn half of the available points, and so the process would be multiplying these two together. You as faculty do not have to worry about that. The composite score automatically calculates, and this is what is going to transfer in to the gradebook in Blackboard. So there is a column, the grades will automatically transfer after the due date, and all of that is set up, not something that the faculty have to do. Again, here you can click on the student name to dive deeper into the student, and you can engage with the student by clicking on the menu next to their name. Okay. And the map here will take you to that student's learning map. So just another way to get back into the learning map page. The Analytics tab is going to offer you some information regarding your students once again for this unit. So you can take a look at the student performance, which shows the time that they've spent, the knowledge covered, and the knowledge state for this unit. You can also look at it by activity. So if you see that there are areas of struggle, you can utilize that for your classroom support, announcement support, or discussions. May need intervention. So here are 5 areas that are potentially struggling. Keep in mind these will also show up in your need to know area. So the information is duplicated here, but that was in a way so that faculty see what's going on. So may need intervention, specific problems, those are going to also show up in your need to know. The other thing to keep in mind is the may need challenge. You might have students that are working ahead, and so in class or through email or other means of communication, you might want to reach out to those students and challenge them to extend their learning based on the content if they're at that point. And then again, the incomplete activities. All right. So those are the data analytics that are available. Now, keeping in mind that the expectation is not that you're going through every single one of these every day before every class. What you're going to want to do is take a look when you get your information, what's available, and find the information that's working for you. So there's a lot of information here, and that does not mean that all of this is driving the classroom. And we want the information to be available, but we don't want you to be overwhelmed. So when you go into a couple of areas, see what's there, the need to know, and the learning map areas specifically, take a gander at the analytics. But you have this term to kind of take your time, figure out what's there, and adjust to the data. We don't want data overload. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go back out from the unit and go back into the entire course. The attributes are the title that is used for the course learning objectives. So we have tied the course learning objectives to the topics. Now what you'll see for this course is that there are 2 courses worth of learning objectives listed. The reason is there's some crossover in APA and research. We utilize that in both those courses. So in some courses you might see more than 1 course listed for the attributes. In others you'll see the course that you are teaching and expect to see. So this is going to give you the information against the learning objectives and how the students are doing. The Assessments tab today is only utilized in our college algebra course. So if you're teaching college algebra, in the Assessments tab you will have access to the midterm and the final results. All other courses, it'll say no assessments have been associated with this section, as you see here, and this is not an area that needs to be utilized. And the Analytics tab, very similar to the Analytics tab I showed before, is looking at your course holistically as a course over all 7 units. And so this is going to give you that holistic view of how the students are doing, similarly to the dive of the weekly assignment or the unit. So there are a few ways to interact with students in the system. The first way I mentioned was sending messages. Okay. When you click next to the name here, you're going to see a couple of options. Another type of piece that you can have is to record an intervention. So recording an intervention is going to track what you're doing with your students. If you're meeting with them in office hours, if you're offering outside support, you could record an intervention through that. And so those are the kind of interventions and messaging. And again, keeping in mind having a nice balance of interacting within the system itself and reaching out in Blackboard and through email to make sure that everything is being received. The next area that I want to show is the instructor toolbox. So within the instructor toolbox, this is where your messages will be housed. The interactions, your interventions, by clicking this will give you a list. We're not utilizing the submissions or the pairings. If a student bookmarks, annotates, or highlights content, this is where you could see what your students are doing and how they're engaging with the content. And we're not utilizing the other three. Now, I'm in the instructor toolbox within the entire course. What I want to show you is if I'm in a unit, so looking at unit 1, if I go into the instructor toolbox, now what you see is a grading option. This is how we could manually sync the grades. There is an automatic grading set up and the grades will automatically sync. But what this allows for is if that automatic grade sync is malfunctioning or something isn't working correctly, faculty have the ability to push the grades through by clicking the submit grading information, keeping in mind that you wouldn't want to do this unless there was an issue and or you received instruction stating that you should push the grades through. The last thing I wanted to show before going back into Blackboard is the way that the system is set up is it's a mastery-based system. So students don't lose their mastery. So if we have a student that's repeating a course, they aren't going to come in with a fresh slate. It doesn't delete everything that they've learned because the students don't automatically unlearn everything. So how we have the system set up for students that are repeating a course is instead of offering the determined knowledge assessment, which I mentioned at the beginning of this, you're going to see, and those students will see something called a verify knowledge assessment. What this does is it verifies that they've retained the information that they showed that they understood the last time they took the course. And students must take the verify knowledge if they're a repeat student for their grades to transfer over. What happens when they take the verify knowledge is based on those results, the system adjusts to what they've retained and then resets their learning map to where their current understanding is. So I did want to point this out because a very common thing we see is when you log in, if you see that the students are engaging, you see that they have topics covered, but you see that their composite score is 0, that is because they have not completed the verify knowledge. And there will be an announcement about this in the classes. If a student skips the verify knowledge, which they do have to go back in and open it up and complete it, or their grade will not transfer. So that's another key thing to just note, that we do have that in place for the students that are repeating a course. So the last piece of information I wanted to share here isn't unique to this course or the adaptive model, but when you get your course, and if you have done the adaptive training as a student in another course, I wanted to show you how you can access the course as a student. So in Blackboard, we do have a student preview mode, and this works for all of our courses. But if you click enter student preview mode, you're able to engage with the course as a student. So for those of you that haven't engaged as a student or engaged with another course, when you do receive your course, please make sure that you're clicking that and engaging with the content as a student, again, to be able to field those questions that students might have regarding the experience that they're offered in the student interface. So this session is recorded and I will be sending it out. I'll also be sending out a text user guide that has images, text, and has explanations of all of the things that I've covered today, so you can reference both the video and that as you begin teaching utilizing the Realize It technology. But with that, are there any questions? All right, well, I'm not seeing any. If anything comes up after the meeting that you wished you had asked and still would like to know, please send me an email and I'll get back to you. The last thing to mention is to be eligible to teach in the adaptive courses, this is step 1. So step 2 is that you are completing at least a unit as a student. And then you also need to log in to the Blackboard classroom for the adaptive training. And there's a writing assignment that needs to be completed where you're reflecting on your teaching practice utilizing the adaptive technology. So this needs to be completed by Friday, September 8th for the September term if you're teaching. All right, well, thank you everyone and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Annie.